Welcome to Goblins and Aliens. Let's build some models. So this video is aimed at the beginner that has received for Christmas some Warhammer, be it 40k, be it Necromunda, and you don't know how to build. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of tutorials online about how to build models, but I just want to take you through it, and then I'll do some videos later on basing, priming, and painting. A few things that you'll need. Some of it might sound simple, but it's important. For instance, you need space. I'm fortunate to have this porch that I use as my hobby zone. If I can leave my stuff out at hand's reach, then I'll get back to whatever project I'm doing. If I have to pack it away, out of sight, out of mind comes into play. Personally, I find having a cutting mat always helps. I try not to damage the surface that I'm working on. You may live with a partner or a family and they don't want you to damage their lovely tables, so protect the table. Then you'll be looking at these clippers. Now, I got this out of a Citadel starter set. They are adequate. I mean, these are a wee bit blunt now and I should get myself some new ones. You'll need some sort of scalpel or hobby knife. If you're too young to use it, get your responsible adult to do it for you. Then you go down to the smoothing. This came in a set. Now, I wouldn't recommend buying one of these because the back of a blade does the same trick. But I do find this handy to have at hand for carving off any mold lines. And then some sanding paper. This is a sheet that I purchased, a Bosch sanding foam thing. Just cut it into a strip, so that will last me quite some time. And then you will also need some sort of glues. I do have the Citadel plastic glue, I have the Tamiya extra thin cement, and some super glue just for odd occasions. Before snipping like crazy, you need to have a look at the instructions. Every piece on this sprue is numbered. So here I need 1 and 2, which are these two here. I will then move on to the rest of the pieces, but work on one model at a time, because if you cut them all out, you'll end up with an absolute mess and things won't match. And when you cut this, you want to use the flat edge towards the inside of the model. As you can see, there are triangular connection points. You don't want to cut too deep into the model or having to gouge out too much. Then it's a case of finding all the other parts for this model, cutting them out, and then we'll sand them down. And after finish cutting out all the pieces of your model, it's time to remove the sprue connection points and the mold lines, which is what we'll do now. This part of building a model is quite tricky since it's really hard to show you what these mold lines look like. If you can imagine when the model's pushed together, there'll be some overspill of plastic, and trying to show that is extremely difficult. But all you're doing is putting the back of your blade or your mold line remover and then just dragging it across to catch and peel off the raised edges that are created by mould lines. This can be a very therapeutic part of model building. Also, be very careful whilst dealing with a sharp blade. And if it's not you dealing with it, make sure your designated adult is very careful as well. After going over it, I'll take a sanding sponge, or, I mean, this is an optional moment, but the smoother the finish, the better, in my view. Now that you've cleaned up all the pieces of model, it's time to start the glue process. Now I'm using both the Citadel plastic cement and the Tamiya extra thin cement. Both of these act the same. Essentially what happens is they melt both surfaces, so when they dry solid. Unlike super glue, where it is in a middle point of the surface which can break. That can have its uses. The main difference between these two are the pots and application. The Citadel plastic glue comes with this nozzle. It has a tendency of clogging up, so you'll need a fine needle to clear it out, and it can slip out, which can be a bit frustrating. The Tamiya has this little brush end that you'd probably see on Tipex or makeup. Now with this one I have loaded it up with bits of sprue, creating a sprue glue, which is a thicker version of it. So I'll show both of them in action. I've laid the model out in the same construction sequence that you find in the wee pamphlet. Before I add any glue, I just like to do a quick dry fit. Sometimes the models need to go in at a particular angle, so just to know that you're not smudging the glue everywhere. Okay, so I will be starting with Tamiya extra thin, as my Citadel plastic glue has actually run out. Silly me. So we'll start off by applying a thin coat on the parts that are going to be joining. Just takes a couple of seconds for it to start to activate. Try your best not to get this on your fingers, because when you start crunching the model together, you'll actually be smudging the detail if you have any of this on you. And it is as simple as that. Hold it together as long as you can. It shouldn't take too long. And then set it aside and work on the next part. Just a quick side note, you may receive a model that has what's called push fit. They are just little joints that push in. Now, I'm not always happy with the sort of finish to it, and they quite often leave gaps. So what I like to do, and bear in mind this is more an intermediate level than beginner, is just snip a tiny wee bit of the nubbin that puts in, and then when you put your plastic cement on, it will have a better bond, have a much snugger fit. There we go. Now, in regards to the base pegs, when they are fully through, you can glue them from the underside, or, as I quite often do, leave them unglued so I can paint the base fully. One of the pitfalls of using plastic cement when you're building a model, if you put too much on, there is a tendency for it to squeeze out the side, and if you get any of that on your thumb or your finger, you do run the risk of blur in the detail. Now thankfully on this model it was just a flat panel, so all I'll need to do is sand it down so it's smooth again. And that's these models built up. Now I am aware that these are beginner steps on how to build a model, so I didn't feature any of the intermediate techniques like drilling a gun barrel or working in a sub-assembly. So if you do know any beginners that would be interested in this kind of content, please share this with them. And the next video I'll do is about basing models. So make sure you subscribe so you see that video. And until the next video, thank you, take care.